Hello travelers, welcome to Lore Spire. In this video, we'll be discussing the secret lore of Arilu's lab. For anyone who hasn't finished the game, there are spoilers in this video, so be aware of that. I'm sure most players have visited Arilu's lab in Act 3. However, the real story of Arilu's lab, and really the defining moment of Arilu's entire existence, not to mention the only reason the world wound, or your character for that matter, exists, is told in the secret area of Arilu's lab. I will be giving my own personal thoughts as we go through this, and by the end of the video we should have a much better understanding of Arilu and her motivations. Now to uncover the secret lore of Arilu's lab. First, to enter this area, you will need the key crystal, which can be obtained from the Temple of Stone Manuscripts in the city of Iz. Using the crystal at this projector creates a portal that leads us to an ominous, otherworldly place. Likely an extra-dimensional space built by Arilu herself to house the secrets we are about to uncover. Upon entering, there is an immediate fork in the road. Let's take the right path for now. We'll need to use the mentioned door to reach the small laboratory at the end of the path. Inside, there is a recording that shows Arilu playing with her son. He's drawing a ram lizard, but wants to make a real one, so Arilu agrees to soon start his training in transmutation magic. She assures him it should only take 10 years of dedicated study to master. Returning the way we came and taking the other path leads to a small house. At the entrance you can hear Arilu's disembodied voice state,
"A person can be in possession of the greatest treasure and never understand its worth. A person can live the happiest days of their life and not know that it will come to an end."
It's obvious she is referring to herself here, and the time of her life that was spent with her son. Inside the home is small but comfortable, and includes toys, drawings, and teaching aids that indicate Arilu did begin teaching her son transmutation magic. There is even a note where Arilu reprimands her son for trying to sneakily use a teleportation wand when he was not supposed to. So far, Arilu seems to be a dutiful mother who strongly desires to pass on her magical knowledge and skills to her son, while he seems to be bold, curious, and likely more interested in the fantastic things magic can do than the studiousness required to master it. Let us see what else awaits. In the next area, we find ourselves in the surroundings of Arilu's home. Now, I want to point out that there are things that can be done here. For the Ascension ending that we will not be going over, we're just sticking to the lore that we can discover here. As we approach Arilu's home, a disembodied voice comes to us once more.
"When planting a seedling, give it soil, space, and moisture. Nothing can grow in cramped captivity."
This seems to me to be some kind of parenting metaphor, meant to describe her approach to raising her son. This is quite a different approach to what we have seen previously from her. It seems to me that she spent the boy's formative years equipping him with knowledge and skills he would need to master magic, but then wanted him to grow those abilities on his own. Activating the projector here reveals her son, who is much older now, performing an experiment on his own. He seems overly relaxed in his methods and much more curious than cautious. The results of the experiment sees a Balor summoned before the boy. The recording stops and we must slay the Balor, who, it should be noted, is weaker than a normal Balor. Then the recording returns and the young man remarks that Mom must be watching and wouldn't let anything happen to him. that he's thankful he gets to learn things, but that one day he will sneak away and do things on his own. There is certainly room for interpretation here, but I think Areelu must have set some type of protection that killed the Baelor or weakened it enough that her son was able to easily deal with it. It's great that she is allowing the boy to learn and grow on his own, but this approach also seems to be fostering a headstrong independence that she may come to regret. Here we have our next portal, but before we peel away another layer to this story, I can't help but wonder how all of this came to be. I mean, all that we are seeing and experiencing now. Did Arilu use her magic to pluck these places out of time and space? Or did she simply recreate them from memory with her magics? You may think it doesn't matter, and ultimately, it probably doesn't. But the answer is the difference between all of this being her idealized recollections and the actual reality of what happened. Personally, the recordings cause me to believe she pulled them from time and space, but who knows? Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Next, we find ourselves back in the void, with stairwells and buildings suspended from nothing once more. Areelu's disembodied voice again speaks to us.
Questions, questions. What is to be done with vanquished foes? What is to be done with treacherous friends? I know the answers to these and to many more questions.
The first building we come to is a jail cell containing the ghost of Cetrae Devimay. Cetrae is quite mad, but talking to him does reveal some very interesting pieces to the story. Choosing any of the first 3 responses will give you a random bit of story, and sometimes he repeats the same thing over and over, so you have to just keep asking to get the whole thing. But here is the gist of his story after having pieced it together. He is of the Found Last clan, and was the first hunter of Threshold. He would hunt down and destroy witches, sorcerers, mages, basically anyone who used arcane magic. At times he would lead entire armies of witch hunters, and at other times he would defeat entire covens of witches by himself. He led a unit of witch hunters who defeated and captured Areelu long ago, before the World Wound. Half of his witch hunters were killed in the battle. Areelu was expected to be alone, but was not, and Cetrae seems to deeply regret killing someone while capturing Areelu. Cetrae remembers that after being captured, Areelu did not resist. She did not even really understand where she was, or what was happening. She just kept repeating the words, "I promise." The last bit of info that can be gleaned from Cetrae Devimay is disturbing, but not surprising, given his story so far. She led me, walking arm in arm with me. My eyes were gone, but I could still hear the screams. She described what I could not see. Is dying light, the step, a Vescivore swarm descending upon the last unit still trying to hold the line. She said, "Here are the cultists dancing and raising their daggers to stab their prisoners through the heart. Here is the last bastion of your clan, the Found Last. Do you want to know what happened to them, Hunter?" I didn't want to. I couldn't help but ask, Am I to blame for this? Finally, once you have his entire story, you can call the ghost insane, which ironically brings him a moment of sanity where he gives you a much shorter, less detailed version of the mad ramblings we have been listening to. At this point, you can send Cetrae to seek Pharasma's judgment, decide to leave him imprisoned here forever, or you can kill him. As far as I can tell, The choice here has no bearing on anything. Searching the room reveals an interrogation record that implies Areelu Vorlesh was tortured after being captured, a book containing the code of the Hunters of Threshold, and most interestingly, a letter from prisoner Opon to the first hunter and high interrogator of Sarkoris, warning them that Arilu was preparing a ritual of unthinkable scale, and that she must be stopped. It seems that a colleague or friend of Arilu's was the reason the witch hunters attacked her in the first place. Continuing down the stairwell brings us to another cell, and inside we find the ghost of Opon. Here is his story. Opon was a talented and powerful spellcaster who led a rebellion against Sarkoris in an attempt to gain rights for arcane spellcasters. He was eventually captured by the witch hunters, tortured, and he betrayed Arilu by writing the letter of denunciation we saw earlier, and eventually he died in his cell and has been trapped here ever since. He laments having rebelled against the Sarkorian elders instead of making Arilu his enemy, but it seems he did not know Arilu's true plan until it was too late. Again, you have the opportunity to decide the fate of this ghost, and again, this decision doesn't seem to affect anything else in the game. Continuing to the final room, we find one last recording in which Arilu presents us with a glimpse into the bitterness of her inner psyche.
There are questions that are better left unasked. There are memories that ought to rouse a storm in your soul, but instead, you look into them and see nothing but emptiness. Unknowing is the worst punishment. Knowing, on the other hand, knowing is eternal, unabated pain.
Now, after all of the hints and veiled messages, we finally get some real answers directly from Arilu herself. As it turns out, Arilu has been setting us up to come here all along, from the beginning cutscene with Discari until the last time we spoke with her at Is. And now Arilu needs answers from us, as much as, probably more than, we need them from her. Okay, so before we go any farther, I just want to point out that your answers here actually do matter if you're going for the Ascension ending. Okay, and there are specific answers that you do need to give depending on how you treated Opon and Cetrae. Okay, so I'm just going to point that out, but we're, once again, not dealing with any of that. We're just here for the lore. First, she seeks answers of our personal feelings and emotions. Whichever answers you give here, she will always respond the same. If you know the story and Arilu's relationship to the commander, then you'll know she's trying to see if there is any bit of her son inside of us. Arilu readily tells us that she is waiting for us at Threshold, and seems anxious that we might not actually come to face her. Then she asks us why we chose to treat Cetrae Devimay the way we did, and after answering we find out that the hunter took his own life, and his tortured existence as a ghost came from his own guilty conscience. Arilu then remarks that his asking us for forgiveness is odd, and makes no sense. I believe this to be a particularly important remark. To my mind, it can only mean one of two things. That Arilu does not believe any bit of her son still exists in the commander, so she truly does not know why the ghost would ask us for forgiveness. Or, and I believe this to be more likely, Arilu is unsure if her son resides inside the commander and wants to take the ghost's request for forgiveness as evidence that he saw her son as part of the commander. meaning Cetrae Devimay was actually asking forgiveness from Areelu's son and not from us. This conclusion would surely give Arilu hope that she had finally succeeded in bringing her child's soul back to life. When we ask Arilu if she is showing us all of this so that we will pity her, she shows a rare flash of anger and tells us that she didn't destroy Sarkoris to be pitied, nor did she do it for revenge, that she did it simply because she made a promise. This is a meaningless answer on the surface, but runs deep if you put real thought into it. Even if Arilu does not actually tell us why she has shown us all this, we can consider all we have learned and draw a conclusion. She has led us here and shown us all of this not for pity, but in hopes to find out if she has finally returned her son to the living. That is the reason for our existence, the reason for our mythic power, the reason we became commander of the 5th Crusade, and the reason that we are here. All of it is because Arilu wants what any mother would want, to have her son return to her once more, and now that she is so close to the end, she desperately needs to know if she has her son back, if she has fulfilled that promise. Returning to the conversation, Arilu continues, revealing that she had indeed been studying rifts and soul-changing forces long before the hunters came for her. That these studies were purely for the sake of knowledge in the beginning, but that the temptation to employ the knowledge eventually became impossible to resist. Now Arilu asks us one last question. Why did we choose the fate we did for Opon the traitor? She goes on to explain that unlike with Cetrae, she did punish Opon, but not for betraying her. No, she punished Opon for lacking the courage to fight for his freedom and for choosing to grovel before his executioners. For this, she made him an eternal prisoner. Then Arilu has a moment of realization that ideas of justice and revenge used to mean something to her. To me, this is important. It shows that when she was younger, and after her son was killed, she still had many emotional ideas. Love, hate, revenge, justice, desire, and so on. But now, after such a long time, it seems she has only obsession. An obsession to see her promise kept, and her son returned. Is this her half-demon side, slowly gaining more power over her human half? Is it her grief and guilt slowly consuming her? Or is this fixation and obsession the natural progression of a human mind that has lived too long? After all, there are definite similarities to Queen Galfrey, and she too possesses a human mind that has lived too long. Now it is time to take one last jaunt through space and time to witness the act that set Arilu on her path. The act that is responsible for the destruction of Sarkoris and the creation of the World Wound. The act that led to all of the Crusades and our very existence. Here is the act that birthed Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. There it is, Arilu making her promise just after her son is slain. A promise she is still desperately trying to keep over 100 years later. Which begs the question, did she succeed? Is the commander her son? Or is there at least a part of her son's soul in the commander? Well, we won't get a definitive answer here, but there is one last thing that, to me at least, strongly suggests Arilu has been successful. When we approach the undying wound left in the earth from the attack that killed Arilu's son, the commander is overcome by a chill and can't help but fall prone. There are other parts of the game, depending on which path you take, that provide even stronger evidence than this that Areelu was successful in bringing back her son's soul. If you'd be interested in a video about that, or on another topic, let me know down in the comments below. Now be sure to check out this video here if you want to know how to save Queen Galfrey, the Glass Key, and the Sword of Valor banner in any playthrough regardless of what decisions you've made. This has been Chris with Lore Spire. Be well, my friend.